All right, can you guys all see this? All right, thanks. So I have a sheet of glass. This is actually plexiglass. So I like to mix on the surface because I get a lot of space, and then I have my little tabletop easel here where I'm gonna be painting on. Behind this is the screen that I'm gonna be using, as I don't want to print out the image, but the thing that I want to do is I want to start mixing this paint. So what I did is I took a little bit of this titanium white and started adding some of this yellow ochre to it. So the colors that you want to mix, if you look at the Zorn palette, which this is essentially the Zorn palette, um, it's very limited so that it allows you to then only focus on getting shades and tones, right? Since we're using black or something that's like a black, we're actually creating tones. So some will be tones, some will not. A guide that I use is a guide that I will always have with me, as opposed to trying to find, each individual color that I see on a person. Before I start a portrait, what I do is prepare myself with a nice batch of paint, right? And I base that on my own skin tone. So when I do that, that's way too light, right? So what I do then is start adding some more of this to try to get at this color. And I slowly try to come up with any variation of these. At least 6 to 12 is what I like to start with. Right, so once I have about 6 or 12 of these pigments mixed, right, these new values, shades mixed, I think that I'm ready to start. Right, so you guys want to start doing this, mixing at least 6 values that are similar to your own skin tone. And the reason I do that is because I can always check to my skin, right? I can do that. Still way too light, so I can start adding some of this. It's gonna start getting towards violet, right? Some of this will get towards green. Some of this will get towards red. And already it's starting to look a little bit more like my skin tone. And the camera is going to look different because skin is perceived different on the camera. But I think that this is getting towards a color that I can then use. Right? So what you're trying to do is replace anything that you have here with a batch of colors that you can easily shift towards one way or another. So something like this, it's a good sort of neutral. I can take something like this and then easily add some of this to it, and then quickly switch it to something that's kind of on the reddish side. And depending on my model, I can easily use that. Now that works fairly well on my nail. Can barely see it. Okay. So what you want to do is make sure that you mix enough of it, right? Ideally, what I would do is be mixing this on my Stay Wet palette, and I'd be saving these colors, so I can also mix even more, and then just have it ready for whatever occasion. So I can put it in smaller containers, and I can label it whatever I want, right? Create my own system of labeling, so that every time I'm going to start a painting or a portrait, I already have a base set of pigments that I've already pre-mixed that are always going to work for me, and I can use and make it, it makes sense, right? To this, I can then start editing even further, so I can make this a little bit more yellow. So depending on the person and the situation, meaning that the temperature and color of light, you may need a bit more brighter colors. You need cooler colors, pigments, to address the model. Okay, so right now I want you guys to take some time and mix yourself a nice batch of pigments. If you have just something like this, a palette that you're mixing on, a good way to keep your pigments wet is going to be just taking a little bit of water Just sort of, if you have like a spray bottle and you can spray this, just putting a little bit of that on there will keep it somewhat wet. Okay, so I'd like for you guys to mix at least 6, some in all of them sort of in the mid-tone range, so nothing too light, right? This one could go a little darker for it to be in the mid-tone range, so I can always lighten any one of these, but to get that mid-tone, what it does is it helps me put all of the mid-tones down on the surface, and then I can push or pull. Push meaning I can darken, pull meaning I can then lighten the color.